All right, so welcome to Couch Time with Cataya, and today's guest is Jessica. And I've known Jessica for quite some time. We've had lots of journey pieces together, and lots of different elements that have unfolded since we've known each other. So I will let you introduce yourself, Jessica, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Oh, you're muted.
Hi, Katia. Thank you for having me. A little bit about myself is I have a background in social work, and I've been working in community social services for around 8 years. And I shifted into like the healing arts through that journey, just recognizing that there's a lot of underlying trauma that people are living with. Um, and wanting to heal the root of that. And so I've worked really hard on training in certain modalities that get to that root. I work with the medicine Cambo, an Amazonian medicine, which helps people get back in their bodies. I've been trained in doing massage, a lot of somatic work, and craniosacral therapy. Um, what else? And I also work with horses as well, to assist people with moving through trauma in a setting that's very natural and with horses who help us mirror our emotions. Um, so yeah, I've been doing a lot of that kind of work, and I love it. And that's it.
Okay, and you also have a background as well with your social work. You started to dive into doing some counseling work as well too. So just I think it's a core thing to really recognize all the different modalities and the different pieces that we've stepped into, especially those on the holistic journey path, right? It's there's so many layers to it and so much to unfold or to learn or to grow with.
Totally. Yeah, I started out with recreation therapy diploma and then moved to social work, but now I want to do counseling after. So just a lot of different pieces, but
Yeah.
they all come together for a bigger purpose.
Definitely. And I think my reference too is that we need different things at different points in time, and how when we have a lot of tools in our tool belt, how helpful that can be to really know how to dovetail into different directions with people and to be able to support in different ways.
Totally.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to dive into some core things for you today. So I always resonate with people that have a lot of tools in their tool belt, because that's very similar to the path that I've been walking, and understanding things on multiple levels. So that's what really inspired doing Couch Time with Katia, is having different understandings around things on a cosmological level, and understanding our blueprint on a deeper level. That sometimes there's things that we can't necessarily fully understand about ourselves, or fully unravel or uncover about ourselves without deeper dives. And I think today is just a snippet of just looking at things from a few perspectives. But I do find that it really gives a chance to just unfold a deeper understanding. And when we know ourselves, we can really transform on so many levels, or really embody ourselves on so many levels as well too. So the first thing, because I go into a few different elements, but the first thing that really stands out to me, well, actually, there's right away I start pegging stuff off as soon as I focus my attention in there. Okay. So the first thing I want to focus on, just because it just immediately like dropped into my sphere, is the space between our eyes gives a very big circumference to how we view our world, or how we are able to anticipate or understand our world. And right away, when I look at you, I can see, so how you do the measurement is basically the size of the eye, and then the space between the eyes, to whether it's the same size space from the size of your eye in between, to whether it's bigger or smaller. So the smaller that space is, typically the person is going to be more like hyper focused, very detail focused, and very like fixated on things having to sometimes be like a very certain way, or they need to be, it's a bit more of a narrow focus, or it's a bit more of a, I could say fixated focus, like where it's like what's being looked at or what's being drawn on is really, really like it's tightly woven. So you can see people that that can struggle with sometimes like obsessive compulsiveness would be like where it's tighter, the tighter the range is like, you know, things would have maybe like this is the one way to do things, or this is the one way to look at things. So with yourself, you actually have quite a broad width between the space between the eyes. And what that means is that you're going to be more like of a you're going to focus more on a larger spectrum. So you're going to be able to pull in things from like metaphysical concepts, or being able to look at things from like broader places. So it's not going to be a narrow focus as much as it's going to be like an expanded focus. So with an
Mm-hmm.
expanded focus, you may miss details a little bit more. Like again, there's always benefits to everything, but there's going to be more of a larger ability to look at things from like multiple perspectives, or being able to come in from more of an esoteric, which means hidden sciences, way of seeing things, or ways of dropping into things, to be able to titrate into understanding a certain perspective from multiple places. So it gives definitely an expanded mindset and an ability to dovetail into different concepts and different things, which makes sense. Like even when I think about your Cambo training, you know, or any kind of, you know, holistic spiritual work that you're doing, you would need to have that space to be able to go into a broader perspective, or being able to expand your mindset, or help others to see things from more of an expanded mindset, to move through things or move through challenges. And even with your horse training, that same component, right? So with the horse training, um, being able to take something that's on a conceptual level, like something that someone's having an experience with an animal, and being able to look at it from multiple perspectives. So being able to tap into the self from multiple ways, which would only be able to come from someone who is a little bit more expanded in nature, or has that ability to drop into like a higher, let's say higher, but a broader place of being able to kind of tap into things. You know, so again, it's not, and this type of work is nothing's ever good, bad, right, or wrong. Like say, if we're looking at somebody to do our accounting, we would probably want somebody who's got a very like very solid, fixed, very um, detailed, focused person. Like they're going to be like, they will not miss a mark on any one single thing, because they're so hyper focused. So that would be the right type of a career choice for somebody that has that type of a placement, versus somebody who is, you know, more in the holistic or healing modalities. The expanded mindset is going to be more beneficial. So that's the first thing that really drops in. Like you're about what's referenced as a B to a C, so you can titrate in and out of both spaces, but I can definitely see you're a little bit more expansive, that space is a little bit broader, so it gives that broader space of being able to really connect into a greater awareness.
Interesting.
And I was thinking about your name, so Jessica. So a lot of the time with name analogy, I'll go into the internal and the external aspects of how one operates. We're going to focus on your external today, which is that your name functions at a 6. And 6 is all about the desire to have very close, tight connections in your world, and a desire to be in relationship. So there's going to be more of a focus on relationships, or the mind will be more drawn towards relationships and relationship-based thinking, over somebody who has, like, say, a different number sequence. So like close friends, close connections, family is going to be important, and relationships going to be important. And you would rather have, typically with this type of an energy, you'd rather have core people in your life, versus having like major large, you know, say functioning community where you have heaps and heaps of people deeply in your world. you would rather have like a tight knit connection, and you can have other associations around that, but it's like really having a, core people in your life that are really, really important to you, and like nurturing those relationships and keeping them really near and dear. So yeah, it makes sense when we get to see too, because somebody who doesn't have a lot of sixes in the frequency of their name or in their life path maybe won't focus so much on relationships. They might be focused in different directions, but relationship will be important to you. And then I want to dive into, so this is really fun for me. So with Mercury retrogrades, we were just talking right before we got on the call. There's a few things that I usually print off, but those sites are down and I can't print things off, but I have multiple ways in which I study things. So I'm going to usually try to keep it to 3, but I am going to dive into 2 of your nakshatra placements. So nakshatras, I know I've mentioned them in other conscious Couch Time with Cataya calls. Not too many C's there by any means. But basically, nakshatras are the lunar mansions that are on the external part of our sphere of the planet that bring in influences. They're referenced as lunar mansions, so they're beyond the planets. And what that does, and they're connected to the energies of certain planets in our field. And so those energies come in like influences and they activate our field. And when they activate our field, they bring forward certain qualities and personality. So those things get activated and they get highlighted in who we are. And so your ascendant is in Magga. And it makes so much sense because the work that you're doing is very Magga focused. So Magga, to kind of break it down into a simplified form, is someone who's basically here to transform the healing journey for your family line. So you're here to be the one to step up to actually heal the roots of the pain of the pieces that haven't been dealt with in your family line. And it's going to be very predominant because it's in your ascendant. So sun, moon, and rising really bring in the influence to the main aspects that really form our personality. And so your walk here is a karmic walk for healing your ancestral line. And when we're healing ourselves or we're healing others, so whether it's directly with our family and we're doing that direct work, or we're doing it indirectly, basically what we heal in ourselves and what we heal in others ricochets out into healing our family line. And so most of us on kind of that end up in the holistic fields will usually have Magga there somewhere, or something that equates to the energy of Magga. So so Magga, it is about taking that responsibility, and that's going, how many generations back. When we heal one thing in ourselves, we heal 7 generations behind us and 7 generations ahead of us. So you healing one core thing that's been happening in your family line that's very intensive, to overturn it is actually going to ricochet that energy forward so that the 7 generations ahead won't have to bear that burden. And it's also healing the family line behind us. And from a time equilibrium scenario, everything is happening in the now, in that perspective of understanding. Of course, we have these onesie human body suits that we're in, and we experience time as time moves forward in a certain equilibrium. But in another sphere or in another timeline, like, time doesn't exist in the way that we experience it. And so there's usually one person that will end up being the core person in the family line that gets signaled to be the one to actually step in to do the healing work on the family line. So it's a very big role to take on, and it usually comes with a lot of, it can come with a lot of pain and a lot of, feeling the roots of things on a very, very deep level. So it brings in that empathic element where we feel everything that's happened in our family line. We feel what's happening with other people. We feel it in ourselves on such a deep level, what it is that's being carried. And, every family line has things to heal. My perspective, and I know I'm not alone in this, is if we're in the human body, we have things to work on. We have things to transform. We have things to heal. And, those of us that are here with a Magga placement are really here to step in to make that transformation happen. And so, doing the work that you're doing is going to be mirroring that dynamic forward of being able to heal those things for yourself, as well as healing things externally. And then you also have Ardra. So this was like the other piece that I was like, do I focus on this? Do I not? But I just feel it's really beneficial to drop into. Um, yeah, there's lots to say. Of course, if, I'm just, it's a snapshot of like the core things that stand out. Um, and I do deeper, more involved, breaking down a whole chart or like the top 10 core pieces and all these different pieces as well. um, but the core ones that I'll just focus on one more today, which is Ardra. So your sun placement is in Ardra. Now I'm looking at your with this charting, I'm looking at your sidereal chart, which is the Eastern chart. So there's the tropical chart, which is the Western chart and the Western placements. Um, Both of them typically will almost mirror each other, but there will be some different placements, and the actual zodiac signs will be in a different positioning. So, and also, yeah, so Magga is in your first house, and let me just see. So your sun is in your 11th, and it's very interesting too because your moon, sun, Mercury, and Jupiter are all sitting in your 11th in this charting, which is which brings in it brings in a lot of components. So your hopes, wishes, and dreams are basically um, they're fringing on the element of yourself stepping into some of these qualities. So basically, let me just see how close. So it's called an orb or a tight conjunction when planets are really tightly connected with one another. So your Jupiter and Mercury are closely interwoven. Okay. All right. I'm not going to go in. Okay. I'm going to keep it simplified. Okay. So the reason I have to stop myself a lot of time. Okay. So the reason I wanted to focus on Ardra is, we've known each other for quite a long time, and Ardra brings in an element where it's a little bit of a lone wolf path. So it's very helpful to know this. Ardra is the most sensitive of nakshatras, and I know that in our conversations in the past, I was like, I'm sure you have Ardra in your cosmological makeup. Like I recognize it right away because it brings in a deep level of sensitivity. It's recognized as basically being like the teardrop of the earth, of the world. So what that means is we feel the pain and suffering of the deeper depths of what really happens and what people go through and what's spoken about and what's not spoken about on a very, very deep level, um, deeper than any other nakshatra placement will feel. So the fact that that's in your sun, that is, you are, it's almost a little bit like feeling like we carry the burdens of the pain of the earth to some degree, because we feel it on such a deep level somatically, like within the root of the depth of ourselves. And so again, this usually instigates someone who's going to become a healer. Or somebody who, I mean, the word healer is a big word, but someone who chooses to step into holistics and the healing path. And it is also a very lone wolf dynamic, where it's kind of a path least walked. So usually the modalities that someone's going to be drawn to are going to be modalities that are sort of the least ones that are out there that are kind of focused on as much, or a little bit more abstract in nature. Like Kambo would be, I would say, I mean, this is just my analogy point, but it would be referenced probably as being a little bit more abstract. Like it's a little bit more unique in nature, the type of work that this is, right? And to be able to really understand or work with it, like there has to be the ability to drop into something that is very unique, right? And so where your own makeup of who you are can drop into it, or can hold the space or hold the cavern for the depth of the uniqueness of the type of work that is. And so getting into that nakshatra, like it's very interesting. Agoris are a representation of Ardra, and I'll try to keep it not too gory. But so Agoris live in India, and basically their spiritual path is a path of breaking down everything that is normalized or would be considered like to be judged in any way, shape, or form. So agoris walk a path where they remove themselves from family, from friends, and they go on a solo path, and they'll usually be with or around other agoris. And this path, basically, they find a human skull and they eat all of their food. Every dish that they have, it comes out of the human skull. And they will do really abstract things like breaking down, like bringing the godliness to everything that happens in the world. That everything is pure in its purified state, that everything is God here, everything is godliness here. And so they'll do things like drink their own urine. Um, like it's quite abstract. They'll put themselves into situations that are very painful in nature to show that they can overcome that pain. So it's a very specific path, and it's one that can definitely head someone to enlightenment. And so it doesn't mean that you're an agori, but what it means is that your life path will typically involve a lot of like harder things that can come in. It can involve a lot more, sometimes there's a bit more pain and suffering that can come with the path. And that it is about breaking things down to move beyond any kind of concept that would be considered judgmental by nature, that would be considered abstract, or would be considered like taboo, maybe would be a good word. So it's kind of the path of least resistance, like in the sense that it's following that path because there's less resistance for somebody who has Ardra as a core nakshatra. And it is about going against the grain and going against the norm. And
Mhm.
so it's about getting comfortable with what that looks like, and to be able to endure, the teardrop or the pain or the suffering that is or can be experienced by walking a very individual path, and being able to be okay with that, being able to be okay with the discomfort that sometimes might bring up, and to be able to transform that from the root. It's also a symbol from the Ardra Nakshatra, as well, is the diamond. So it is very much about crushing down the self to really transform the diamond, more so than other nakshatras, because that can be, an analogy that's used quite often for those, that are doing holistic work or are on deep spiritual development paths. The diamond is an analogy that's used quite often, but I would say that it's not always something that's like um, always prevalent as deeply as someone that has this showing up in their chart. That there is and has to be a breaking down of the self to basically transform the self over one's lifetime. So, okay, I will stop there. Um, so many things I could say. Okay, so yeah, let me know, yeah, how all of that landed for you,
Um,
and it can
yeah,
take a
definitely. Yeah, I definitely found it very insightful just to get some like more awareness around my path here, and to know that everything that I've gone through, as painful as it can be, is for like a greater purpose and part of my makeup here on earth and my path. I know in the past, like knowing, having these tools and diving deep into like our qualities is actually really helpful, because in the future when something happens, having that awareness helps bring comfort. Um, so I do find it really helpful to hear and learn more about the nakshatras.
Mhm.
um, yeah, so thank you for telling me about that. And it does make a lot of sense. I resonated with what you said, just about being like a lone wolf, and also healing, being the one to kind of heal the generational trauma.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's a lot to take in and process, and but it is helpful to know. So thank you for sharing.
I feel like we can sometimes take ourselves off the hook a little bit when we can see a little bit more about our life walk. And yeah, knowing thyself is just such a healing process to be able to land in deeper and take ourselves off the hook sometimes of like, oh, why is my walk a little bit more abstract sometimes? Or why does it show up in this way or that way? Like, it gives us a chance to really, I think, appreciate and bring more self love to our individual walks.
Mhm. And the challenges that come up, I liked what you said just about like the challenges that come up when you are walking that journey and maybe going against like original systems and like structures, um, and what that can feel like
Yeah.
in society. But yeah, trusting that the systems are sometimes meant to break down old systems to bring in new. And there's people here that have that mission
Yeah.
to do that.
There's the way showers that have to be a little bit further ahead on the walking line, and it usually
Mhm.
requires taking a few more bullets and a few more jabs and things thrown one's way, right? To really be birthing, a new way of being, and yeah, a new path that's being transformed. Being usually a couple steps ahead, there's a bit more. There's more of a brunt that has to be experienced and anchored into for sure.
And it starts on the individual level first.
Totally. Yes. Yes. Getting that strength and resilience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So, yeah. So,
Thank you so
being,
much.
mhm.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I think it's really helpful for helping people understand themselves better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, as yourself, one tool, well, multiple tools when it comes to analogy work. I've been at it for a long time, understanding myself and being able to understand my uniqueness that hasn't fit into the typical box very easily. And definitely a lot of the people that come into my world are those that are way showers that are, walking their own individual paths. And to be able to understand ourselves is just such a powerful tool. And and as yourself too, having many different angles to dovetail into, whether it's, energy healing work for myself or cranial sacral, or, going into the roots of things through, holistic coaching and counseling or somatic work. All of these different pieces really, are their tools to really help ourselves and help others to really move in the directions that we need to move in. So yes, thank you for playing with me today, and being open to diving in, because I know it's, in the moment you don't know what's going to come up, and so being able to be available and open and curious, and to not have hesitation, to have courage, courage to have it revealed.
You too.
Yes.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
thank you, thank you, thank you, and um, yeah. I will stop the recording now.